First of all, welcome everyone to our second set of town hall meetings. We're thrilled that you're here, and I want to say on behalf of everyone associated with the Nashville Symphony, a very special thank you to all of you for being here, choosing to spend a little bit of your day with us, and most especially for your support, because you are indeed among our most loyal supporters, and we are deeply grateful for that support. Just to start by telling you a little bit about what we're going to be doing today. With me on the screen are Mark Peacock, Chairman of the Board of Directors of the Symphony, along with Steve Brosvik, our Chief Operating Officer. Mark and I will participate in some of the discussion today, and Steve will serve as our moderator. What we plan to do today is give you a little bit of a look into our current state, 2 months now into the pandemic, tell you a little bit about what's happened for those of you that were present during our first town hall meeting, about what has transpired since that last town hall meeting, and kind of talk a little bit about where we are today, where we think we're going. But in addition, we didn't want to take the whole meeting doing that. We wanted to actually focus this meeting much more on our mission. We have a number of panelists that you'll hear from today, including the maestro, so our musicians, some of our musicians, and staff, about various projects that are underway, about how they're coping with the pandemic, and about how we're approaching our mission in these very, very challenging times and very different times. We also have some very special performances for you all today. And so we're looking forward to that. And with that, I would turn it over to Mark Peacock, who will introduce our first bit of music. So Mark, in addition to extending his own welcome.
Thank you, Alan. Hello, all. Thank you very much for zooming in. My computer says 136 participants. I am blown away by that. I mean, that is so overwhelming. Thank you very much. It is a privilege to help update you on where our organization is right now. Obviously, it's a time of transition, and we are all going to get through this. The highlight of every board meeting is the musical performance we have at the beginning of the board meeting. I think today will be no different. I love our musicians. I've always loved our musicians. I've always been impressed by musicians. But even more so now, to see their creativity come out despite everything being held down, to see how they can still be on social media and just show their skills and their joy. And what we're going to show you is perhaps one of my favorite ones. I think I've watched this video 20 times, and though I'm prone to exaggeration, I think this is a correct statement. This is from Catherine Kohler. It's Till Eulenspieler's Merry Pranks. I really hope it comes out as well as it does on YouTube. If it doesn't,
you froze here, Mark.
Boy. Steve?
Right, and here comes Strauss. You can go ahead and roll the video.
was fantastic. And Catherine is, of course, one of our newer members of the orchestra, and we're so thrilled to have her here. And it was, I think, very creative. So I hope you all enjoyed that. Those of you that were on one of our last sets of Zoom calls will recall that we focused on 2 or 3 major points in terms of how the board and the management team were approaching the pandemic and its impact on the symphony. And I wanted to start by saying again that we are really putting the health, welfare, and safety of our employees, our patrons, all of you, our volunteers, and our musicians at the very forefront of the concerns that we have when we think about how and when we can resume our concert activity. And so those, please understand, are very much in the forefront of our minds. You will also recall that on the last calls, I did talk about the idea that we were going to be applying for a payroll protection program loan from the SBA. And I'm happy to report today that we did get that loan. We received a total of about $2.85 million in PPP funds that are forgivable. It's a forgivable loan. And that has enabled us to keep musicians and staff on payroll for an additional nearly 2 months. And so that was a real godsend, a real gift that helped us, extend, our employment beyond the beginning of this pandemic. And we, in addition, I think you all know by now, have suspended all concert activity through July 3rd. So we have a total of, I think it's about 53 concerts so far that have been impacted by the reschedulings and postponements and in some cases cancellations. And I know that a number of you have been very generous in either telling us that you would donate your tickets back and allowing us to use those funds immediately. And some of you also have allowed us to keep those funds on hold pending the resumption of concert activity. And so we're deeply grateful for that. We're continuing to assess future concert activity and continuing to engage in long-range strategic planning. We're looking at scenarios, that range from concert activity starting in the fall to dates past that point. As we look at all of those scenarios, we're keeping very firmly in mind the notion that there's also an opportunity here for us to, even in many ways, strengthen what we do as we come back into performing our concert activity. And I think what I would like to do is ask Mark Peacock to share a little bit of the board's point of view about where we are today and some of the things that we're thinking about. So Mark, please take it.
Yeah, so the board has the advantage of going long-term. The board is much more strategic. We don't have to do the day-to-day tactical that Alan and his excellent staff have to do. So we look more long-term, and long-term is the survival of a strong organization that supports its patrons, that supports the city, and personally, in my goal, supports the city's musical education. And that's really where we're looking. Short-term, of course, the day is not here where we can have 82 musicians safely on the stage, but that day's coming. The day is not here when we have 1,800 people safely in the hall, but that day is coming. And the day is coming where we have 1,800 people comfortable sitting in the hall. And so we are planning for that day to come. Hopefully that day will be sooner than later. I don't think anyone on this Zoom knows the exact day, but we are hoping that it's going to be sooner. But when that day comes, we plan on being ready, and we plan on being ready for a long-term, strong, successful, dynamic organization. So we're going to be busy even if we're not on stage right now. And I really appreciate your support. We're going to use this time well.
Okay, thanks, Mark. One of the important points about what Mark just said is that our approach to addressing the challenges that we currently face really is very much focused on the question of how we can make sure that the institution of the Nashville Symphony is here for many generations to come. And at this point, we are all quite confident that we will be able to reemerge on the other side of this whenever that happens. As much uncertainty as there is around when that date might come, that we will reemerge, and we will reemerge as a strong, vibrant institution here to help this community recover. And you know, music has great power. We all know to express that for which there simply are no words. And we think that the symphony's reemergence will really be beneficial to helping the community heal from the emotional and psychological damage that this thing has wrought. You know, it's been tremendous, as we've all heard. And as we move forward, you know, our musicians and staff in the meantime have been very focused on the question of how do we continue to fulfill our mission in these challenging times. And they've been very creative in the ways that we've responded. And you've just heard a great example of that in Catherine's Till Olenspiel. By the way, her dog's name is Tilly, if you're wondering, and that's the connection with the whole thing. So I thought it was very cute. I love dogs. But you know, we're still faced with the possibility of a shutdown of unknown duration, and you know, perhaps you know, even some hibernation for a period of time. But we're not yet fully equipped to make those decisions. But what I think it's important to know is that the board is trying to balance the questions along with the management team of the short-term needs of our employees and the long-term kind of existential question of the symphony's future. And I think doing a very good job of that. And the PPP loan is certainly an example of that. You know, one of the things that we will continue to do is continue to focus on delivering top-notch customer service to all of our patrons, and continue to focus on raising money, because obviously if we're in a period where we're unable to play concerts that's extended, it's going to be important, one, to fund at least the operation at a low level during that period, but it's also going to be important to maintain our momentum so that when we reemerge able to focus on the work ahead of us. So, you know, I guess the final 2 points I would make in this portion of the presentation is that while we are in a state of hibernation and unable to play concerts, as we are now, we're unable to play concerts, every dollar that is contributed to the symphony is a good investment in the long-term future of the Nashville Symphony. It's not going to be squandered, and the board and management team are very focused on that future and on spending the time that we have today to really think through how we can be even better for this community, even better at what we do, and emerge as a strong, vibrant institution. Finally, you know, we think that as we re-envision that future, our intention anyway at this point, and I'm sure we'll do this, is to engage as many voices in the community as possible to help us with that work in reimagining our future. So I'm sure that we will call on some of you to participate in that process, and I look forward to that because I think it's critical work for the institution at this time. And with that, I probably ought to turn this over to Steve to introduce the next segment, but we are going to now hear an artistic update. So Steve, would you like to set that up? You're muted. Muted.
There we go. I'm sorry about that. Thank you, Alan. Before we move on to the artistic segment, I just want to give everybody a quick reminder, and that is if you have questions, either that you thought of before the town hall or come to mind while we were in the town hall, please use the Q&A function on the bottom of your Zoom screen, and you can go ahead and submit those questions, and we'll try to get to those questions during the town hall. And if we're not able to address all of them, we'll follow up with you after the town hall today. And now I'm going to go ahead and turn it over for some artistic updates to Jessica Slais, our Vice President of Artistic Planning, and to Giancarlo, our Music Director, Giancarlo Guerrero, and to Tucker Biddlecombe, who is the Director of the Nashville Symphony Chorus. Jessica, would you like to start?
Thanks, Steve, and thanks for joining us this afternoon, everyone. I wanted to give, just to kick us off, a little bit of a behind-the-scenes look of what has been happening in terms of canceling and rescheduling concerts, give you a sense of what that involves. And the key things have been for us over the past couple of months, communication and flexibility. From that first flurry of cancellations in March to the extension of our closure and trying to make alternative plans, really to follow through on the great programming and artists that we were planning to work with, and as well as the contracts that we have promised them and music that we've promised you. So in most cases, it's been somewhat straightforward. And if you're talking about an individual artist looking for a singular date on their side and our side, sometimes that can come together very quickly. But we do obviously a lot of presenting here at the Schermerhorn, and there's a whole variety of artists through, some of which are doing whole extended routed tours, and their agents are juggling multiple cities and looking for new whole strings of dates. So sometimes that's a little bit more complicated. One thing we're still looking forward to figuring out are changes that might be happening with international artists too, and people being able to come to us or go overseas. So that may necessitate some changes in the future as well. I think that we're trying to figure out also the ripple effect that this is happening into the future. Obviously, we look forward to programming 2, 3, 4 years in advance. So everything that didn't happen this spring is something we've been emotionally invested in for a couple of years. And we're still really committed to bringing that to you. But it also, on our side, has necessitated some conversations with people that were expecting to join us in 2023, maybe, and maybe that shifts a little bit further. The great thing has been, though, unfortunately, everybody's in the same situation, and artists and agents are dealing with this with every orchestra. So everyone has been tremendously understanding and helpful, and that's really been invaluable because, again, I think the bottom line is we want to deliver on this programming. We still believe in that, and bringing it to you with the orchestra and these artists is really the key thing. It just might take a little bit more time. So we've filled up a lot of our open positions in the 2021 calendar year, and also shifting things a little bit forward. So I want Giancarlo to talk a little bit about what he's looking forward to, and also how he's been spending his time and creating great content to share with you right now.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. And first of all, I hope that everyone is staying healthy and safe in your homes. For me, I'm sure I'm doing a lot of the same things that many of you are doing, catching up on my reading and doing work around the house. I've come to find that I'm not really a very handy person, if that makes sense. I mean, maybe I work with my hands, but anything that has to do with any sort of work around the house, I'm kind of learning as I go along. But fortunately, my wife Shirley is incredibly patient, and she has kind of shown me the ropes in that regard. Other than that, music has been a great companion through all of this, and preparing these lectures that I've been talking about, the Beethoven symphonies, and discussing it, composers' recordings that we have done in the past have given me great joy, because it's given me the perfect reason to reconnect with some great friends and people that are very close to the Nashville Symphony, to our community, and who are absolutely rooting for all of us to succeed in this current situation. But I have to say that I have been absolutely inspired by not only the generosity of our community of stepping up and really helping us through this difficult time, but every single person that is a part of this incredible organization has really come together and try to come up with the best solutions with the information that we have available. And as many of you know, this is kind of changing almost on an hour-by-hour basis. But I do know that we have the perfect team to weather this current storm, not only with our incredible board, who have been great leaders, not only in the community, but really guiding us and giving us the support necessary to continue forward, but as well as the musicians, Alan and Steve and the entire administrative staff, and every single person who has been here in the building taking care of this incredible place of music to make sure that we're ready to go the minute that we get the green light. So I have to say that it reminds me a little bit of our last big crisis with the flood 10 years ago now, of how not only the community, but this institution came together. And I've never felt prouder of the people that are in charge right now. And it gives me great confidence that we are going to overcome this and that music will come back. And I have to admit, it's been very difficult to be away from my colleagues, the musicians on stage. But as I said, we have a world-class orchestra, and whatever that future may look like in the short term in terms of what the stage might look like, we have the incredible musicians that are going to adjust and do whatever is necessary to just bring great music to Nashville. And I cannot wait for that first day when it will happen, and we'll be able to celebrate it and just take it day by day until we're able to return to something that resembles the normality that we had a few months ago.
Thanks so much, Giancarlo. Yeah, so as Steve mentioned, Tucker Biddlecombe, our wonderful director of the Nashville Symphony Chorus, is also here. And the chorus is definitely a challenging situation right now. So Tucker, tell us a little bit about what you've done with the chorus in the end of this season and how all of that has been.
Well, when the quarantine began, the chorus was continuing to rehearse, but we were rehearsing virtually. So over Zoom, you would see 160 people singing to their computer screen. And it was, now I couldn't hear them, thank goodness. That would have been a cacophony of sound. But it was productive time. We were able to bring in a couple guest artists, some composers of some works that we were working on. Gabriella Elena Frank came in and did a lecture on her piece, The Conquest Requiem. We had Carol Barnett, who's the composer of one of our pieces, The Bluegrass Mass, that we were working on. We got a chance to communicate with some composers that perhaps otherwise we wouldn't have had the opportunity to do. But you may or may not know that for singers, the news is especially bad in terms of COVID-19. We are classified as super spreaders. And it's because of so much of the aerosol when we're singing, the effort that's created, it's sending a lot out. So we right now are really in a holding pattern. If you've seen the loft in the Schermerhorn, if you've ever sat up there, you know that there's not a lot of room between those seats. It's pretty tight, and when the chorus gets up there, they're shoulder to shoulder. So coming up with some solutions is going to be, it's going to take a lot of creative minds, and I think we have the right team to do it. The most important thing about the chorus is keeping their spirits up. You know, they're hearing a lot of bad news about singing. And so what we're doing is just sort of meeting by Zoom once a month. I'm reminding them that this will end and that we'll be hopefully back together singing very soon.
Tucker, I'm going to jump in with a question, Jessica, sorry. Coming in, have you heard of any particular difficulties for sections of the chorus or people in the chorus with kind of working through Zoom and trying to keep moving on repertoire and the motivation?
You know, you'd be surprised. I was really, really shocked at how computer literate everyone was to be able to get onto Zoom. Every face was there. Giancarlo visited us once, which was wonderful. It's really fun on Zoom because you can sneak in a guest and you don't have to tell them that they're coming, and all of a sudden everyone's surprised. But the learning curve was pretty good. When I was running rehearsals, I have a keyboard here on my desk and I have a lot of software that I've sequenced piano accompaniments. So essentially what I was doing was just guiding their practice. They were essentially practicing in front of their computer screen. And I expected to scroll through the pages of faces and kind of see some frowns and some, sad bottom lips, but it wasn't that at all. It was, I think of it as it's about 70% as effective as anything that we could do in a live setting when all things are perfect. So one of the hardest parts about running a Zoom rehearsal is making sure someone doesn't have their thumb on the space bar and not constantly unmuting themselves. That's the trickiest part.
Thanks so much, Tucker. I think, our chorus is one of our greatest assets, and their camaraderie and support for each other has been really inspiring. I got to join one of those Zoom rehearsals, and it's really tremendous. I'm so thankful for them and the spirit that they bring to all of their performances and us in general to complement our orchestra musicians. So thanks so much, both of you.
Great, thank you. Any closing thoughts, Jessica, before we move on to Kimberly McLemore?
No, thanks so much for your time.
Great, thank you. And I'd like to introduce Kimberly McLemore. Kimberly is our Director of Education and Community Engagement and has been with us in a prior role as the head of our Accelerando program. And Kimberly, if you'd like to give us an update about what's been going on since we haven't been doing concerts in the Schermerhorn.
Sure. Thank you everyone for joining us today. And the Education and Community Engagement Department has been pretty busy in the last few months, and we've been working really closely with our communications department, also our musicians on the OC, to adapt some of our existing programs like ensembles and sectionals for school groups, community groups that are meeting virtually, in addition to those students that are continuing to learn from home in the past several weeks. So it's been exciting to see some of our existing programs adapt to that virtual setting, but it has also provided the opportunity for us to curate some new content, find opportunities to expand and create further partnerships. For example, you might have seen Enrico Lopez Yanez Making Music with Enrico videos. Those are new since the COVID-19 shutdown. And we're also able to, one other partnership that's pretty exciting is a partnership with WPLN. And we are expanding our Young Composer offering to connect our Composer Lab fellows with WPLN Student Composer Fellows, connect and fellowship and network with each other, and then connect those scores of the WPLN student composers with our musicians to not only have a conversation with the composer, with our orchestral musicians, but then have them play and record their score, which is pretty exciting to expand that partnership. We've also had a summer camp in the works, and you might have seen this online or social media, and we still have room if you're interested in registering your kindergarten through second grader for our first summer camp. Enrico is also going to be leading students through this 1 week, 1 hour a day summer camp with games and musical activities and a ton of interesting things and those students are bound to have a ton of fun with Enrico. So please register. We still have a couple of spots left. If you know of someone who might be interested, or you or your family is interested, you can register on the website, and it should be on the homepage. Registration closes tomorrow evening, so act fast. Thought I'd put a plug in. The last couple of months have also provided the opportunity to look into the future at what content are we building now or adapting now that can really build a really robust digital offering for our community. And that could include listening guides. It could include further Making Music with Enrico videos. It could include musician interviews, further music instructional resources. And so we're really taking a closer look at our website and our digital media and our digital content and resources for families during this time. Especially because there's not a lot of certainty around how long this will be. So we want to make sure that we're serving our community the best way we can. And one of our programs that is an example of adapting to the virtual model is our Accelerando program. We are about to enter our final year where our program is in full capacity. This is the final year where we're ramping up. We're now at going to be at full capacity, adding 10 new students next fall, which is really exciting. And our students have been taking virtual lessons, virtual music theory classes, virtual master classes online since March, and they're going to continue doing so as long as we need to. And our new students will kind of be jumping into that virtual model, which is a little bit different than some of our other classes, but they're troopers and they're really looking forward to joining the rest of the Accelerando cohort. And I shout out to our Accelerando faculty who have really just tackled teaching privately on Zoom or FaceTime and making that work the best for their students. So it's pretty exciting to see this program continue. A lot of our students were planning to go to summer festivals this summer, but are instead looking for virtual summer music opportunities that they can to kind of do that in lieu of an in-person festival. A lot of the festivals and universities are creating online content this summer for our students to take part in. And in thinking about our education department as a whole, it's really at the core of our mission to serve the community of Nashville and make sure that we are committed to finding these partnerships and collaboration opportunities. And we're about to see a video, We Are Nashville. It's a piece by Bryson Finney. He's our Accelerando coordinator. And this was a very exciting collaboration with multiple community partnerships, MMPS and Visions Youth Choir. Also some of our Accelerando students, faculty, and symphony musicians played on this video. And we chose this selection to highlight how committed our musicians and our staff and the community is to working through this and stay true to our mission. With that, I'll hand it over to Steve and we can watch We Are Nashville.
Thank you, Kimberly. Let's go ahead and roll the music.
A city that's just for me, a valley of opportunity, made up of what we see, a symphony of diversity. This is where I belong, city I call home, hand in hand, together we will stand. We are Nashville, that's you and me. We are Nashville, a city of harmony, hand in hand, together we will stand. We are Nashville. From Belmont to Berry Hill, Broadway on down to East Nashville. Our many differences all become a song that we sing in unison. This is where I belong, the city I call home. Hand in hand, together we will stand. We are Nashville, that's you and me. We are Nashville, the city of harmony. No matter where you're from, together we are one. Through the languages we speak, there's one heartbeat. Hand in hand, together we will stand. We are Nashville. No matter where you're from, together we are one. Through the languages we speak, there's one heartbeat. Hand in hand, together we will stand. We are Nashville. You and me, we are Nashville. The city of harmony, we are Nashville.
Somos Nashville.
We are Nashville.
Somos Nashville. Nous sommes Nashville.
私たちは Nashville です。
Amra Nashville.
We are Nashville.
We are Nashville.
Nashville Kame.
We are Nashville.
Tommy Nashville.
احنا Nashville.
We are 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 Nashville.
Nosotros somos Nashville.
我们是 Nashville.
We are Nashville.
우리는 내시빌입니다.
We are Nashville.
We are Nashville.
We are Nashville.
We are Nashville.
Well, it's moments and pieces like that that always remind us our place in the community and how we can be part of the incredible artistic opportunities that the city has for us. And also taking a look at the end credits of that piece reminds us that this is a complete continuum and there are people in here in Nashville from everywhere. And it is a great community to belong to. Now we're going to be joined by June Iwasaki, our concertmaster, and Melinda Whitley, one of the violists in the orchestra, both who've been with us for some time and have played incredible roles in the growth and the breadth of this orchestra. And let's talk a little bit about the conditions that we're currently living in for you and the role of the musicians at times like this and how being unable to perform concerts has really affected you as musicians. June, how's this all for you and what does it mean for your colleagues?
Well, thank you for having me first. It's a pleasure to be on this town hall meeting with everyone. And even though I can't see anyone, I'm imagining finally talking to a lot of people, seeing a lot of people. It's something that we all miss as performers on stage. But to answer your question, I think these last 2.5 months have really been life-changing in many ways. I think, you know, we go from this kind of highway life of continuously learning and performing music at the same time at the rate of, you know, you almost forget about how quickly you're having to learn and relearn things and get them to a level of, you know, a performance level that we're all proud of. And it kind of just, the silver lining of all this, as much as missing my colleagues and missing the audience and missing working and missing performing, it slowed me down, which is nice. I'm not jet setting. I'm not missing my son growing up. That has been a really nice part of this, is the time spent with family, and also just to kind of regroup my own thoughts about playing the violin. You know, I've pulled out some of my old music, revisited stuff that I haven't seen since I was a child, going over my old teacher's notes and just kind of focusing on keeping my technique and my brain active in the musical world without having the opportunity or the schedule, you know, not knowing when the next performance will be, but to keep myself challenged in a way. So it's been good. It's the scary is the unknown. I'm not sure what the new normal will be. I'm sure and as everyone has said so far, I think we have a great team to figure that out. And I look forward to working together with everyone to make sure that we have some sort of performance as soon as we're able to. And I hope that the audience will join us, whether it's in person or virtually, whatever we decide to do.
And you're right, there's a lot of things that we're going to have to figure out together, and we'll do it together, talking with, you know, representatives from the orchestra, from the staff, from the community, because we will have to figure out, what does a new performance normal look like? Are we going to be able to put the entire orchestra on the stage? Do we have to use the stage extension? Tucker's already talked about the challenges of working with a chorus at this point and vocalists. And will the audience be ready to return, and when, and how many people can we fit into the concert hall at a time? And how do we pair that virtually, which we'll talk about a little bit as well. You know, have you been hearing things from other musicians? And, you know, are they experiencing all of this the same way, or is it different a little bit for everyone?
I think just like everyone, I think it's different for everyone. I think where people are in their lives, whether they have kids or, you know, where they are in their lives as far as what they want to be doing. I know a lot of people have been doing a lot of work on their house or gardening. You know, I've picked up baking. You know, I've join that cult that is just baking bread every week. And no, I'm not hoarding the flour, but you know, I found some at the beginning and I've been slowly using it.
I can't find yeast.
That was hard to find. Yeast was hard to find. I had to go to a couple stores. But no, I think, you know, the people that I've talked to both here in Nashville and around the country and around the world, I have colleagues all over the place that are experiencing similar things. You know, there's always that question, the fear of what's next, but they are all a little bit in their minds, they're like, this would be nice if if the whole world could do this for like 2 weeks a year and just relax and don't travel and stay home with your family. But it'd be great if it wasn't because of a pandemic.
Absolutely. Well, and Mindy, you have at least a dual role in the orchestra. You're, you know, one of our violists, but you're also the head of the orchestra committee, and you've been involved in a lot of this from multiple perspectives. Give us a little bit idea of how you've been spending your extra time.
I don't have any extra time. I'm working harder than I have ever worked in my life in this orchestra. It's been an interesting thing, but it's been good for me on a personal level. I have done a little bit of cooking. If I can follow a recipe, that means I'm doing good. So a lot of times I post a picture of what I made on Facebook, just so people know I'm okay. But other than that, yeah, as the orchestra committee chair, I've had to do a lot of adapting and encouraging my colleagues in their adaptation to what we have to do now. And we've had to change a lot. You know, we can't do what we want to do. And so much of what we do, we don't think about anymore. When you sit on the stage with 85 people and you play a piece of music, the constant minute adjustments that we all decide to make in the moment, it's such a part of our training that we don't think about it anymore. But it's a part of all being together. And so to be separate from each other and have to make that adaptation for what we do together has been a challenge. And we've had to do that not just with ourselves, with each of the musicians, but with all of you and with all of our patrons and the audience members. And it's really been, I hate the word pivot because every Zoom meeting, everybody uses the word pivot. So I'm trying not to use it, but we've had to change how we relate to every little part of what we do. And I find that personally really difficult. I miss seeing people and being in the same room with them. And even this is hard because I can't see who I'm talking to. So that's been really interesting. And so we've had to really pull together in ways as an ensemble that we've never done before. And it's been a really new focus that I hope will continue in the future.
I agree with you completely. I think, you know, it does feel very different doing all of this remotely. I'm not able to run downstairs and grab you for a question at intermission or before the concert or anything. But I think we're finding ways to do it. And I think we've found ways to communicate. And we've had discussions, as you say, about things that we've never had to have discussions about before. And I think one of the things that we're all taking away from this is that we want to get back to where we were, but we're also discovering some new things. And I'm really hopeful, as I know you are, that we're going to come through this on the other side and we're going to be able to pull through this, all of the things that we're learning and new ways that we're adapting and find some new positive things to add to what we're already doing. Speaking of new ways of doing things, Mindy, would you like to talk a little bit about the sneak peek that everyone's going to get on this town hall of our next video segment that'll come up?
Sure. We're going to play for you a little bit, an excerpt, almost 6 minutes of the finale of Beethoven 6, which was a piece of music we were supposed to perform shortly after we shut down. Thank you, COVID-19. And it's a piece, we had a lot of discussion about what piece we should create as an orchestra ensemble piece to put out online. And everyone had an opinion. The debate got really huge, actually. And we learned a lot about each other in that debate. But we finally settled on Beethoven because it was something that was coming up, and also because of the programmatic nature of the symphony that I'm sure Giancarlo has covered in his talks about it. The whole after the storm issue and the resolution and the pastoral nature of the finale and the joyfulness that is in that piece of music, we felt was really appropriate for our first large project. That large project turned out to have a lot of issues that we had to learn many things. And since this orchestra's never done anything like that, most orchestras hadn't, we learned a lot of things, new words, like we all know the word latency now. And no one knew that before unless you had an audio connection. And for those of you that I can't see who might not know the word latency, you've already witnessed it on the other two videos you've seen. When there's a timing issue between what you hear and what you see, that's a technical issue that's you can't really completely get rid of. And because it's a Zoom meeting, it's going to be a little bit worse. When you go to watch any of these clips later on YouTube, it will look very much better. It'll be a much more positive experience. But we found, having over 50 individual submissions from musicians in the orchestra of this long clip of music, none of us could edit it, so we had to do it in one take. That was challenging. People spent a long time trying to get a really good take of that much music, and it's different than when you're on stage and you do it all together and someone else is listening. You can't listen to that at the same time that you're doing it all by yourself alone in your living room. So putting those all together, both the audio, lining up how everyone worked out with the click track, which we had to create ourselves. We had to create a MIDI file to sort of hear something to help with the pitch. But unlike other orchestras, we didn't have our own recording of Beethoven 6 to play along with and use in part of the final product. So we had some post-production issues that we used our symphony family, an extended family. We had to go a little outside. Marcus Warner, who's the son of our bass player, Glenn Warner, was extremely helpful. Also, we have Andrew Dunn, who has a 1-year contract in the cello section. He has been extremely helpful. None of this could have come together without these people. And of course, all of the production and social media people on the staff have gone over and above what they have ever had to do before. And so we sort of recreated the wheel, but it was a very important project to us, and it's very meaningful to all of us. And we hope that everyone feels the same way.
It's definitely been a labor of love, and I've watched everyone working through it together, and I think the end product is absolutely worth waiting for. And I also actually applaud the fact that, unlike some of the other orchestras, not to diminish anything that they've been putting together at all, that you can tell when their recording comes in to supplement everyone else. And this is all of you. This is just our musicians playing. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Q&A a little bit for everyone. Stay with us just a moment, because actually I'm going to go ahead and keep us with our musicians for the first question. June and Mindy, one of our listeners wrote in and said, Igor Levit said in an interview that he might practice months and months to get ready to play a piece, and in order to reach the needed level of artistry that he wants to have in mastering that particular work. June, you've mentioned the pace at which we have programs continuing throughout the season. And the question is, how do you all kind of come down from that focused preparatory intensity?
You know, I think that when I say that, you know, we're learning things on a fast basis, it's not a lot of the stuff that we're doing in the Nashville Symphony. We're not learning from scratch. I would probably say, well, in the Nashville Symphony, we have a lot of premieres, so it's probably a slightly lower percentage. But, you know, I think 75–80% of the music that we play on our classical programming, a lot of us have played before already in some capacity with maybe a different group, but there's always that. It's kind of like riding a bike. A lot of these pieces come back much quicker than when we had to first learn it. So yes, when I was first learning, you know, Tchaikovsky Fourth Symphony, let's say, that's a piece that I think all of us on stage can pull out and get to performance quality probably in about 2 days, if we had to. It's not ideal, but if we have to, and I think we've had to do it before. But when I first learned that piece, yeah, it took me months. I had to go through every note. You know, I had to listen to it. I had to find a cassette tape and listen to it. So yeah, I think the normal process of learning something is very different once we're at a professional level of a symphony orchestra. But as far as during this pandemic, I have felt that because I don't have that deadline to learn something, I can be even pickier than I am usually. You know, I'm usually still very, you know, attentive to details, but I can actually break things down even more and not worry about, oh my gosh, I have 2 more days. That's like, I have as much time as I have right now to fix the little things that I'm hearing in my own playing. And I can record myself a lot more now. I have the time to listen and record myself and listen back to what I'm doing.
Mindy, are there other projects coming up that are in the works that musicians are working on?
Yes, there are still over 20 projects in various stages of being done, and they run the gamut. Like Kimberly was mentioning, the projects with our composer fellows and extending that to students. We have a lecture series where certain musicians are going to do a longer sort of recital program involving talking about certain pieces of music. We have various at-home kinds of things that we're doing, like the Tilly thing or some chamber music things. One project that hasn't been mentioned was Chris Farrell's piece that just got dropped this week, his viola octet that he wrote. And unlike all of the other projects that we're doing, that was more for me personally like our normal function, because I didn't have the music very long. I had to turn it around pretty quickly and it was completely unfamiliar. So it felt the most panicky to put together because I was doing all of these other things at the same time. But yeah, we've already put out at over 24, and we have 20 more coming at us that will be finished by the end of June. So we are incredibly fortunate that all of our musicians are putting forth so many different things. And at the same time, many of them are serving on committees where we actually had to do things like this and work with individual staff members and different committees and talking to patrons, and everyone has stepped up at the most incredible level. And I think that level of commitment shows in these particular projects that you're getting to see today, and especially the Beethoven.
Yep, thank you, Mindy. And I'm going to add my thanks to all the musicians who've been doing all of this work, because it really is incredible that we are able to still have some connections between our audience and all the musicians on stage. And personally, for me, it's been great having these additional conversations about things we haven't had a chance to really talk about before, because we've been in our own kind of functional worlds doing what we do every day. Ellen, I'm going to jump back to you really quickly. We've had several questions come in about getting to reopening and kind of coming off of this video connection and concept that we've been talking about for a few minutes. What kind of plans and things have we been talking about internally here at the Symphony about continuing the possibility of virtual performances or pairing that with live performances?
Well, I think, first of all, I think it's fair to say, and I don't think I'm putting words in the musicians' mouths either, I think they would agree with this sentiment, that we've sort of swung this door open to the virtual world of performance. And I think we all kind of recognize now that it's critically important for us to do a couple of things as we move forward into the future. And when I spoke earlier about the idea of spending time kind of reimagining what the institution can be, how it can operate, that reimagination, in my view, runs the gamut from questions of technology and how we employ technology in the future, all the way to issues of community relevance and looking at the world through an EDI lens, for example, and how we relate to everyone in this community. And so I think with respect to technology, you know, to your question, Steve, is we've sort of flung this door open in our field that was really not something that we paid a lot of attention to because it just wasn't a sort of economically viable thing to do. And I think we're all now excited about it. And we know that when we come back, and I think the question was specifically about, you know, how we envision, you know, whether it's socially distanced performances where people are spread out in the hall or that kind of thing. Our economic model, because of the high fixed cost of operating the symphony, really doesn't allow us to do anything less than, you know, have a reasonably full hall. I mean, it'll work at a certain level, but we've got to be able to be confident as we go back into this that we can get enough attendance at concerts to support the economic model. That's not a question of when will the authorities let us play, but it is a question of, you know, how can we make the audience feel comfortable? How can we, again, going back to the question of the health and well-being and safety of everyone involved in the enterprise, including our audiences and our musicians, you know, there are all these questions to address. Well, the virtual tools may be the thing that makes the difference for us. The ability to offer what we do both in the hall and simultaneously perhaps to a paid audience sitting at home. I mean, I think there are all kinds of ways, and I'm not suggesting I know the answers, I'm just raising the questions and saying that I think there are all kinds of ways that by working together and reimagining the future, we can really make our delivery systems of the content that we produce even more robust into the future and serve an even wider audience in the process. So I would be interested in hearing any thoughts that you know, Mindy or June, if you want to add to that, what you guys think.
No, I think that the musicians would totally agree with you that this forced separation and forced rest for some has created an opportunity to look at the balance of what we do and rebalance it. Because we really didn't have that balance before. We've been so crazy busy going down one road and we were forced to stop. And it gives us another opportunity to look at how we use our time, how we use our resources, and create a balance that will make us more successful as an institution going forward.
Exactly. June, did you, anything to add to that?
Not much, pretty much spot on right there, Mindy. No, I think like we've all said, I think we look forward to figuring out how we can get back to some semblance of performing together and presenting it to an audience in probably a different fashion for a time being. But if it's going to be economically viable for us as an institution, I think we are all going to be on board 150%.
Well, we've got one more question in the queue right now, which I'll go ahead and briefly answer because then we're going to jump to the Beethoven. And that question is, how are we thinking about partial audiences or limiting attendance in the hall and getting the hall back open? And I'll just briefly let everybody know that we are looking very carefully at reopening the hall in a very safe way, looking at, you know, what does it mean for lobby space, for intermissions, for restroom use, for food and beverages. Do we have intermissions or not? And what's the capacity of the hall to meet certain guidelines that we think people will be comfortable with? And we're going to be asking a lot of questions of our audience coming up very soon to help us with those solutions so that we're making good decisions based on information that we're hearing back from all of our amazing concert goers. Without further ado though, let's go ahead and jump to the Beethoven, and then we'll come back after the performance and we'll wrap up the town hall a little bit.
So that was fantastic, and bravo to our musicians. I see some bravos in the, but one of the most probably unsettling things to musicians in the time of COVID, and we didn't mention this, is the fact that when you do things online, you don't get that instant feedback. So I hope you're all at home clapping for our musicians, because they are the reason for all of this. Bravo to them. And
Alan,
yes,
I am more this virus now. More sore. The stupid virus.
yes, I know. I agree. We all miss our musicians and the music more than anything, more than you can possibly imagine. And so I hope all of you, all of our musicians who are listening in and are on the call today, recognize how much we value all of you. Steve, do you, I guess we're at the point of wrapping up. Mark, do you want to begin that?
Yes, thank you all for your time today. Thank you all for your support. We're going to get through this. We don't know the time frame. We don't. There's a lot of hurdles, but we're going to get through this. Hang in there with us. Please keep your support with us. We're going to get through this, and it's going to be great.
Thanks, Mark. And, I would make 3 points, and we'll save the best for last. Giancarlo can have the last word here, but I want to just reiterate 3 points. One, as Mark said, we're going to be here when this is over. And that means that your investment in the Nashville Symphony as we go through this, your willingness to stay with us, really will make the difference in how we reemerge on the other side. And so just please know how deeply grateful we are for your support. And we hope that you will all, when we ask over the next period of time, respond generously. Second, I want to again reiterate that one of our biggest concerns is the health, safety, and well-being of everyone involved. And so when we do make decisions, they may not line up exactly with what you're hearing in the press or what the acts of public authorities, but please know that we're making very carefully considered decisions that are both in the best interest of that first thing that I said about health and safety and well-being, and in the best interest of the Symphony Institution financially. And thirdly, I just wanted to say that we are going to work very hard. All of us are committed to this, to reimagine this institution so that when we reemerge as an organization that is more relevant than ever, that is performing at the highest level, that is bringing you great programming day in and day out. And as we do that work, again, I think you can expect to see a number of changes, including a much greater use of technology in the future. And I know that I mentioned EDI earlier, but I didn't actually say what that was. And so some of you may not have caught up with that. But what I mean there is equity, diversity, and inclusion, to make the institution as inclusive and diverse as possible so that we are even more relevant and we have the voices of this entire community around the table, helping us be what this community wants us to be. So with that, I would turn it over to Giancarlo and to take us out. There you go.
Am I there? Okay, sorry about that. Well, all I have to say is that we are fortunate to live in a city that proudly calls itself Music City. And one thing is to be sure is that whenever these types of crises happen in the history of humanity, music has played a great role in the healing process of it. And I think it is more important than ever that our symphony thrives and actually is a necessity as all of us get out of this and try to recover our normal lives in some way, shape, or form. But with that being said, I have to say that the same way that we think of our people that work in the supermarkets and hospitals that as essential workers, we also need to feed our soul. And music and arts is a big part of it. So I do know that once we were able to figure out a safe way to regroup and bring live music from our concert hall, we'll do it immediately, as soon as it is safely capable to do so. But in the meantime, we do need the support of this community, which already has shown great generosity. And I'm absolutely certain that not only with our wonderful team here in the symphony, but this community, which loves the orchestra so much, and I know thinks the world of it, I know that we're in a good position that we're going to get over this, and that the sun will shine again, and we'll be together again celebrating wonderful music in this beautiful city.
Great. And Steve, you're muted. No, you're not. You're still muted, Steve.
I keep going back and forth. Well, thank you, Mark, Giancarlo, Alan, for participating today as panelists, and also to our other panelists, June and Mindy and Kimberly and Jess. This has been a great opportunity to stay connected, and mostly thank you to all of you who are viewing today. We really appreciate the opportunity to be back in touch with you in any way that we can, and we'll keep working to keep the symphony moving forward, and we'll be here for a very long time. Thank you all for joining us. Have a great rest of the day.
Thanks.